She sat there like she was untouchable, like she had it all figured out. Dr. Miranda Hayes, criminal psychologist, expert witness, the woman who'd helped convict dozens of criminals by getting inside their heads. And now she was the one on trial for murder. But here's the thing that'll blow your mind. She wasn't nervous. Not even a little bit. This woman had testified in court over 100 times. She knew every trick, every tactic, every way to manipulate a jury. She'd literally written academic papers on criminal behavior and deception. So yeah, she thought she had this in the bag. Her lawyers were confident. The evidence was circumstantial. No weapon, no witnesses, just a dead ex-husband and a whole lot of suspicion. But then, the prosecutor stood up and said 4 words that made her face go white. "Your Honor, play the video." What happened next? Let's just say this hoe went from smirking to panicking real quick. Because that video didn't just crack her perfect alibi, it shattered it into a million pieces. And y'all, when I tell you this case is wild. This is the story of the psychologist who thought she could psychoanalyze her way out of a murder charge, the expert who became the subject, the hunter who became the hunted. On Women Justice Files. This is the case of Dr. Miranda Hayes. All right, now let's get into this absolute disaster of a human being. But first, we gotta understand who Miranda Hayes was before she became a murderer. Because y'all, this woman fooled everybody. Miranda Elizabeth Hayes was born on March 14, 1987, in Portland, Oregon, to 2 university professors. From day one, this girl was groomed for success. And I mean that literally. Her parents had her whole life mapped out before she could even walk. Straight A's through elementary school, valedictorian in high school, full ride to Stanford University. On paper, this chick was perfect. The golden child who could do no wrong. She majored in psychology with a focus on criminal behavior. Even her professors were impressed, and these are people who taught at one of the best schools in the country. They said Miranda had this uncanny ability to read people, to understand what made them tick, to get inside their heads. According to her undergraduate advisor, Dr. Patricia Ewan, Miranda was extraordinarily intelligent but somewhat detached emotionally. Now, that's academic speak for this girl was smart as hell but something felt off. She breezed through her master's degree and got accepted into the clinical psychology PhD program at UCLA. That's when she met David Hayes, a law student from a wealthy Newport Beach family. They got married in 2011, right after Miranda got her doctorate. She was 24. He was 26. By all accounts, they looked like the perfect power couple. She was about to start her career as a forensic psychologist. He was heading to a prestigious law firm. But here's the thing y'all need to understand about Miranda. She was obsessed with control. And I don't mean like, oh, she likes things organized. Nah, this woman needed to control everything and everyone around her. Her college roommate, Jessica Torres, told investigators years later, Miranda kept a literal spreadsheet of everyone in our social circle. Who was dating who had money problems, who was struggling in classes. At first I thought she was just being helpful, you know, but then I realized she was collecting information like leverage. Let that sink in for a second. This hoe was keeping files on her friends, like she was building dossiers, but Miranda's career, it was taking off. By 2013, she was one of the most sought-after forensic psychologists in Southern California. Prosecutors loved her. Defense attorneys feared her. When Dr. Miranda Hayes took the stand, juries listened. She specialized in something called criminal behavioral analysis. Basically, she'd evaluate defendants, figure out their psychological state, and testify about whether they knew right from wrong, whether they were competent to stand trial, whether they were likely to reoffend. In legal terms, she was an expert in criminal culpability and mental state assessment. In regular speak, she was the person who told juries whether someone was a cold-blooded killer or just crazy. The media loved her too. She was young, attractive, articulate, everything they wanted in an expert commentator. She appeared on local news, crime podcasts, even got interviewed for a Netflix documentary about a serial killer case she consulted on. She was famous for getting inside killers' heads. What nobody knew was that Miranda Hayes was studying these criminals for a different reason. She wasn't just learning how they thought. She was learning how they got caught. Meanwhile, her marriage was falling apart. By 2015, David had made junior partner at his firm. He was working insane hours, pulling in serious money, about $400,000 a year. Now you'd think that'd make Miranda happy, right? More money, more status. Nope. According to text messages recovered later, Miranda told her best friend, Angela Reeves, "David thinks money fixes everything. He doesn't get that I need a partner who's present, not just a paycheck." But here's where it gets interesting, y'all. Miranda was making about $180,000 a year from her private practice and court testimony fees. So it ain't like she needed his money. But what David had that she wanted: his family's wealth. David's parents had set up a trust fund worth about $4.2 million. David was the sole beneficiary. When his parents passed, they were already in their 70s. That money was coming to him. And if he died while they were married, half of it would go to Miranda. In early 2016, they tried marriage counseling. Didn't work. By summer, David had secretly consulted with a divorce attorney. We know this because the attorney later testified about their consultations. David sent his attorney an email that read, and I quote, "I want out, but I'm terrified of what Miranda will do. She knows how to destroy people. I've watched her do it in court. I need to protect myself and my assets." Y'all, this man was scared of his own wife. But David made a critical mistake. He didn't move fast enough. He spent months preparing, consulting attorneys, gathering financial documents, trying to build an airtight case for divorce without alimony. Months that gave Miranda time to plan. Because here's what investigators found on Miranda's laptop later. And this is chilling, y'all. In August 2016, 3 months before David died, Miranda's search history included how to make death look like accident, undetectable poisons, life insurance payout after accidental death, can forensic psychologist be suspect in murder, how do detectives catch killers. This woman literally Googled whether forensic psychologists could be murder suspects. The audacity, the absolute audacity. November 12, 2016. That's the date everything changed. The date David Hayes died, or more accurately, the date Miranda Hayes killed him. Now, before we get into what happened that night, we gotta talk about the weeks leading up to it. Because Miranda didn't just wake up one day and commit murder. Nah, this was planned, calculated. This hoe spent weeks setting the stage. October 2016, 4 weeks before David's death. This is when Miranda's plan really started taking shape. On October 15th, Miranda called her personal physician complaining about insomnia and anxiety. Nothing unusual for someone in a stressful marriage, right? Her doctor prescribed her Ambien, a powerful sleep medication. Except Miranda ain't having no trouble sleeping. Hospital records later showed she'd been sleeping just fine. This was about getting access to sedatives. She filled that prescription the same day, got 30 pills. But here's the kicker. Her pharmacy records show she refilled it 3 weeks later, claiming she'd lost the bottle. 60 Ambien pills total. Guess how many were in her medicine cabinet when police searched her house after David died? 4. October 20th. Miranda and David attended a charity gala at their country club. Multiple witnesses later testified that they seemed happy, dancing, laughing, acting like the perfect couple. And this is where you see Miranda's psychology training in action, y'all. She was creating a public narrative, making sure everyone saw them as a loving couple. That way, if something happened to David, nobody would suspect marital problems. This is called establishing baseline behavior. It's a technique used in criminal psychology to identify abnormalities. Miranda knew exactly what she was doing, but privately, the messages between them were ice cold. On October 23rd, David texted Miranda, "We need to talk about our future. This isn't working." Her response, "Not now. I'm with a client." That client didn't exist. Investigators checked. Miranda's calendar was empty that day. Fast forward to November. The first week of November, Miranda told her office manager she needed to reduce her caseload. She claimed she was dealing with personal issues and needed to focus on her marriage. Translation: she was clearing her schedule for murder. November 8th. Miranda convinced David to do one more marriage counseling session. Dr. Helen Rodriguez, their therapist, later testified about this session. She said Miranda was unusually affectionate and optimistic, while David seemed guarded and uncomfortable. Dr. Rodriguez's notes from that session included this observation: "Wife is displaying behavior inconsistent with previous sessions. Suspect possible love bombing or manipulation. Recommended continued therapy." But there wasn't gonna be any more therapy, because Miranda had already picked the date. November 12, 2016. A Saturday. It was a cold night in Newport Beach, temperature dropping to 48 degrees. Light rain expected around midnight. According to phone records, Miranda sent David a text at 9:47 a.m. that morning. "Let's have a nice dinner tonight, just us. I'll cook your favorite lasagna. We should talk about us. I love you." David responded at 10:15 a.m. "Okay, I'll be home by 7. At 11:30 a.m., security cameras caught Miranda at Whole Foods shopping for dinner ingredients. The cashier who checked her out later told police she seemed cheerful and normal. Of course she did. This woman was a professional. She knew exactly what mask to wear. Meanwhile, David spent the afternoon at the country club golf course with two friends, Marcus Chen and Robert Wilder. They teed off at 1 p.m., finished around 4:30. The three of them grabbed drinks at the clubhouse bar afterward. According to Marcus's testimony, David seemed distracted. When Marcus asked if everything was okay, David said, "I think Miranda and I are gonna try to work things out. She's been different lately, like the woman I married." Different lately. Yeah, different because she was playing him, getting him comfortable, lowering his guard. David left the country club at 6:42 p.m. His house was 15 minutes away. Security footage from a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera caught his BMW pulling into his driveway at 6:58 p.m. In 3 hours, he'd be dead. Now, what happened inside that house between 7 p.m. and 10:47 p.m.? Nobody witnessed it directly, but investigators were able to piece together a timeline from forensic evidence, phone records, and later testimony. And y'all, when you hear this, according to Miranda's initial statement to police, she and David had a lovely dinner. They ate around 7:30, drank wine, talked about maybe taking a vacation to Napa Valley in the spring. She said David had 2 glasses of wine with dinner. She had 1. After dinner, they moved to the living room, watched TV, and relaxed. That's what she told police. Here's what actually happened. Miranda did cook dinner. That part was true. But while she was making that lasagna, she crushed up at least 15 Ambien pills and mixed them into the meat sauce. Now, 15 Ambien pills ain't gonna kill someone outright, but it's gonna knock 'em out cold, especially mixed with alcohol. David's toxicology report would later show zolpidem, that's the drug in Ambien, at levels consistent with approximately 150 to 200 milligrams in his system. The normal prescription dose, 5 to 10 milligrams. She gave him 20 times the normal dose. They ate dinner around 7:30. David would have started feeling the effects within 30 minutes: drowsiness, confusion, loss of coordination. Miranda told police he was just tired from golfing all day. By 8:15, this man couldn't have kept his eyes open if he tried. According to Miranda's statement, David fell asleep on the couch watching TV around 8:30. She said she tried to wake him around 9 o'clock to go to bed, but he was sleeping so deeply that she just covered him with a blanket and let him rest. He wasn't resting. He was drugged unconscious. At 9:47 p.m., Miranda sent a text to her friend Angela. "Date night with David went great. Fingers crossed we can make this work. Miss you. Y'all. This woman is texting about her nice date night while her husband is passed out from the drugs she gave him. At 10:15 p.m., Miranda's phone connected to Bluetooth in her Mercedes SUV in the garage. The car's computer system, one of those fancy ones that tracks everything, logged that the garage door opened at 10:17 p.m. Here's where it gets real dark. Miranda had to move David from the couch to the car. Now David was 6'2", about 195 pounds of dead weight, literally unconscious. Miranda was 5'6", maybe 130 pounds. So how'd she do it? Remember, Miranda was a psychologist who worked with psychiatric hospitals. She had access to medical equipment. Investigators found a folding patient transport stretcher in her garage, the kind used to move incapacitated people. She'd thought of everything. Miranda knew her neighborhood. She knew where the security cameras were, and more importantly, where they weren't. Her route out of the neighborhood avoided 4 different cameras. Cell phone tower records show her phone traveling west on Pacific Coast Highway at 10:31 p.m., then turning north on Jamboree Road. She was heading to the Back Bay Nature Preserve, a remote area with hiking trails and a cliff overlook. No cameras, no houses, no witnesses. At approximately 10:45 p.m., Miranda Hayes parked her Mercedes at an empty trailhead parking lot. According to forensic evidence, she opened the back hatch, pulled David's unconscious body out of the car, and dragged him toward the cliff edge. Now, I need y'all to understand something. David wasn't dead yet. The autopsy would later show he was alive when he went over that cliff. She pushed her husband off a 40-foot cliff while he was unconscious and unable to save himself. 3 to 5 minutes of drowning, y'all, possibly semi-conscious, in freezing water, in the dark. At 10:52 p.m., Miranda's car left the parking lot. Her phone reconnected to the cell tower near her home at 11:09 p.m. The garage door logged opening again at 11:12 p.m. And then, she went to bed. This hoe really killed her husband, drove home, and went to sleep like nothing happened. November 13, 2016, Sunday morning. Miranda woke up at 8:30 a.m. according to her phone's activity logs. She made coffee, took a shower, got dressed. At 9:15 a.m., she sent David a text message. "Morning, babe. Where'd you go? Your car is gone. Did you go to the gym?" She texted her dead husband asking where he was. The manipulation, the calculated coldness. When David didn't respond, she called him 3 times, left a voicemail. "Hey, it's me. Getting worried. Call me back." All of this was creating a digital trail, evidence that she didn't know where David was, that she was a concerned wife looking for her husband. At 11 a.m., Miranda called David's friend Marcus Chen. According to Marcus, she sounded anxious and confused, asking if he'd seen or heard from David. Marcus told her he hadn't talked to David since they left the country club yesterday evening. At 12:47 p.m., 15 hours after she murdered him, Miranda Hayes called the Newport Beach Police Department to report her husband missing. The 911 call lasted 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Let me read you some of it. Operator, 911, what's your emergency? Miranda, hi, yes, my husband is missing. I don't know where he is. This isn't like him. Operator, when did you last see your husband, ma'am? Miranda, last night. We had dinner together. I fell asleep on the couch, and when I woke up this morning, he was gone. His car is gone. He's not answering his phone. Now listen to this next part, because this is where her psychology training shows. Miranda, I'm worried something might have happened. He's been under a lot of stress at work. He's been depressed. I'm scared he might hurt himself. She was already planting the suicide narrative. On the first call, 2 patrol officers, Officer Daniel Kim and Officer Jennifer Martinez, arrived at the Hayes residence at 1:15 p.m. They found Miranda in the living room, appearing distressed and worried. Officer Martinez later testified. Mrs. Hayes seemed appropriately concerned. She told us she and her husband had been working on their marriage, that things had been going well. She said she was worried because he'd mentioned being depressed about work recently. More manipulation, more narrative control. Newport Beach PD launched a missing person investigation. They checked David's credit cards, no activity. His phone, last pinged near his house at 7:03 p.m. the previous night, then went dead. That was odd. See, David's phone stopped transmitting at 7:03 p.m. But neighbors' Ring cameras showed his car didn't leave the house until 10:17 p.m., over 3 hours later. So where was David between 7:03 p.m. and 10:17 p.m.? He was unconscious on his couch, drugged out of his mind while his phone was turned off or destroyed. Monday, November 14th. Still no sign of David Hayes. Police searched his usual locations, his law firm, the country club, his parents' house in Los Angeles. Nothing. Tuesday, November 15th. A jogger at the Back Bay Nature Preserve noticed something in the water near the base of the cliffs. It was David Hayes' body. The Orange County Sheriff's Department Marine Unit recovered his body at 3:45 p.m. He was still wearing the clothes he'd had on Saturday night, khakis and a polo shirt. Initial assessment at the scene: apparent accidental fall or possible suicide. The body showed significant trauma consistent with a fall from height and drowning. Two detectives, Detective Sarah Chen and Detective Mark Rivera, drove to the Hayes home to notify Miranda. And y'all, her performance was Oscar-worthy. Detective Chen later testified. When we told Mrs. Hayes that her husband's body had been found, she collapsed, literally fell to her knees, sobbing. We had to help her to the couch. She kept saying, "No, no, no, this can't be happening." But here's the thing. Detective Rivera noticed something. In his police report, he wrote, "Witness displayed emotional distress but observed no actual tears. Subject's hands were shaking but breathing remained steady. Noted performance quality of grief response." Translation: this detective thought her crying seemed fake. November 16th. The autopsy of David Hayes began at 9 a.m., conducted by Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Richard Yoshida. Initial findings showed exactly what you'd expect from a fall and drowning: fractured ribs, ruptured spleen, water in the lungs, head trauma. But then Dr. Yoshida ran the toxicology panel. Zolpidem, massive amounts of it. And that's when this whole thing flipped from a tragic accident to a homicide investigation. Because here's what didn't make sense. If David Hayes took Ambien to help him sleep, why would he then drive to a remote cliff overlook in the middle of the night? He wouldn't. Dr. Yoshida's official ruling: manner of death, homicide; cause of death, drowning secondary to blunt force trauma while incapacitated by zolpidem intoxication. November 17th. The Newport Beach Police Department officially opened a murder investigation. Detectives Chen and Rivera were assigned as lead investigators, and they had one primary suspect: Dr. Miranda Hayes. Here's the thing about committing murder when you're a forensic psychologist who's testified in dozens of criminal trials. You think you know all the tricks. You think you've studied enough cases to avoid the mistakes other killers made. But Miranda Hayes was about to learn a hard lesson, knowing how criminals get caught and actually avoiding it. Two completely different things. November 18th, 2016, 6 a.m. Detectives Chen and Rivera, along with 6 other officers and 2 forensic technicians, executed a search warrant at the Hayes residence. Miranda was still in her bathrobe when they knocked. According to Detective Chen's report, Miranda's first words were, "Why do you need to search my house? My husband died in an accident." Girl, they didn't say it was an accident. That's assumption number 1 that made them suspicious. The search lasted 7 hours, and y'all, they found some damning stuff. First hit: the bathroom. Miranda had a prescription for Ambien, 60 pills filled over 6 weeks, but only 4 pills remained. Detective Rivera asked Miranda about it. Her answer: "I've been stressed. I've probably been taking more than I should." Except her pharmacy records showed she picked up the second bottle just 5 days ago. That meant she supposedly took 26 pills in 5 days. That'd kill a person, hun. Second hit: her home office. They seized her laptop, her iPad, and her work computer. Forensic analysis of those devices would prove to be the smoking gun, but we'll get to that in a minute. Third hit, the kitchen sink. Forensic luminol testing revealed trace amounts of blood in the garbage disposal. Now, blood in a garbage disposal ain't automatically suspicious. Could be from handling raw meat, a cut finger, whatever. But combined with everything else, the forensic team bagged and tagged the whole disposal unit to send to the lab. Fourth hit, and this is a big one, that medical transport stretcher I mentioned earlier. It was folded up in the corner of the garage. Forensic techs found hair and fiber evidence on the stretcher that would later be matched to David Hayes. Why would David's hair and fibers be on a medical stretcher in his own garage? Because his wife used it to move his drugged body, that's why. Fifth hit, Miranda's Mercedes. The detectives had it towed to the police impound for processing. Modern luxury cars are basically computers on wheels. They track everything. Where you go, how fast you drive, when doors open and close, when the car is started and stopped. And Miranda's car told a very interesting story. On November 12, 2016, Miranda's Mercedes left her garage at 10:17 p.m. and traveled 8.3 miles to the Back Bay Nature Preserve parking lot. It arrived at 10:41 p.m. It stayed there for 11 minutes. Then it drove back home, arriving at 11:12 p.m. Now, Miranda had told police she stayed home all night Saturday. Said she fell asleep watching TV around 9:30 and woke up Sunday morning. The car's computer just proved that was a lie. November 19th. Detective Chen and Detective Rivera brought Miranda in for a formal interview. And this is where we get to see the psychology expert try to out-psychology the detectives. The interview started at 2 p.m. Miranda came in voluntarily. She wasn't under arrest yet. She brought her attorney, Mitchell Baxter, a high-priced defense lawyer from Los Angeles. Detective Chen opened with a softball. "Mrs. Hayes, thank you for coming in. We're trying to piece together what happened to David. Can you walk us through that Saturday night one more time?" Miranda's response was textbook, and I mean that literally because she'd probably taught this exact technique. She was calm, composed, made eye contact, spoke clearly. She said, "Of course, detective, I want to help however I can. David and I had a lovely dinner that night. We were trying to reconnect, work on our marriage. We ate around 7:30, had some wine, watched TV. He fell asleep on the couch around 8:30. I tried to wake him to go to bed, but he was sleeping so deeply, I just covered him with a blanket. I fell asleep around 9:30 on the other couch. When I woke up Sunday morning, he was gone." Perfect answer. Consistent with her previous statements. No hesitation, no nervous tells, except it was complete bullshit. Detective Rivera then asked, "Did you leave the house at all that night?" This was the moment. This is where Miranda could have come clean, could have adjusted her story, could have maybe explained things in a way that didn't make her look guilty. Instead, she said, "No, I told you, I fell asleep around 9:30 and didn't wake up until Sunday morning." Lie number one, confirmed. Detective Chen then placed a printout of the Mercedes GPS data in front of Miranda. "Mrs. Hayes, according to your car's computer, your Mercedes left your garage at 10:17 p.m. on Saturday night and drove to the Back Bay Nature Preserve." According to Detective Rivera's notes, Miranda's face briefly showed surprise before regaining composure. Y'all, even trained psychologists can't completely hide their microexpressions. Miranda leaned over, whispered with her attorney for about 30 seconds. Then she sat back up and said, "I think I did drive somewhere that night. I'm sorry, I was so upset about David that I forgot. I couldn't sleep, so I went for a drive to clear my head." Ain't no way she forgot about driving to the exact spot where her husband's body would be found the next day. "Come on," Detective Chen pressed. "What time did you go for this drive, Miranda?" "I'm not sure, maybe 10 o'clock, 10:30, Detective Rivera." "And where did you drive to, Miranda?" "Just around. I wasn't paying attention to where I was going." Detective Chen. "Did you stop anywhere, Miranda?" I might have pulled over to look at my phone. I don't remember exactly. More lies. Vague answers. Classic deception tactics, and the detectives knew it because Miranda herself had probably testified about these exact behaviors in other cases. Then Detective Rivera dropped the bomb. He pulled out a photo, a still frame from a traffic camera on Pacific Coast Highway, timestamped 10:31 p.m., November 12, 2016. It showed a Mercedes SUV matching Miranda's heading west on PCH, and you could see two figures in the front seats. Two figures. Miranda wasn't alone in that car. Wanna guess who the second person was? David Hayes slumped in the passenger seat unconscious. Detective Chen later testified that this was the moment Miranda realized she was caught. Her face went white. Her hands started trembling, but she tried one more play. He was with me, he wanted to come, we were trying to talk. Detective Rivera, Mrs. Hayes, David looks unconscious in this photo. Miranda, he was sleeping, he'd been drinking. Detective Chen. The medical examiner found lethal levels of Ambien in his system. Miranda, I don't know how that's possible. At this point, her lawyer, Mitchell Baxter, finally did what he should have done from the beginning. This interview is over. My client has nothing further to say. They walked out at 3:47 p.m. The interview had lasted 1 hour and 47 minutes. 1 hour and 47 minutes of Miranda Hayes, criminal psychology expert, trying and failing to manipulate two experienced detectives. The irony, it's chef's kiss. While the interview was falling apart, the forensic computer team was tearing apart Miranda's laptop. And y'all, they hit the jackpot. Remember those searches I mentioned earlier? How to make death look like accident, undetectable poisons, all that incriminating stuff. Miranda had deleted her browser history, used a special software to wipe the hard drive. But here's what this dummy didn't know. Her browser history was automatically syncing to her iCloud account. Deleting it from her laptop didn't delete it from Apple's servers. She backed up her murder research to the cloud. The forensic team got a warrant for her iCloud data and recovered everything. August 3, 2016. Ambien overdose symptoms, August 15th. How long does Ambien stay in system, October 1st. Back Bay Nature Preserve cliff height, October 18th. Drowning versus fall death determination, November 3rd. Missing person investigation process, November 8th. How do detectives solve murders? This woman literally Googled how detectives solve murders before she committed one. Like she was studying for a test. But wait, it gets better, or worse, depending on your perspective. The forensic team also recovered deleted emails between Miranda and a former colleague, Dr. James Morrison, another forensic psychologist. In an email dated October 24, 2016, Miranda wrote, and I'm reading directly from the recovered file, Jim, hypothetical question for a paper I'm working on. If someone wanted to simulate an accidental death, what would be the most common investigative mistakes they could exploit? Obviously asking for academic purposes. Would love your thoughts. Academic purposes. Right. Dr. Morrison's response included a detailed breakdown of how investigators often miss evidence in apparent accidents, the importance of toxicology reports, and how physical evidence can be misinterpreted. She was literally consulting with other experts on how to commit the perfect murder. Meanwhile, analysis of David's phone records revealed something else interesting. His phone was powered off at 7:03 p.m. on November 12th, right after he got home. It never powered back on. Now, David's friends all testified that he was attached to his phone, never turned it off, always reachable. The forensic team examined David's phone after it was recovered from his body. Despite being in salt water for days, they were able to extract some data. The last manual action on the phone, opening the camera app at 7:01 p.m., but no photos were taken, which means someone else turned off that phone. By November 22nd, 10 days after David's death, the investigation had uncovered GPS data placing Miranda's car at the death scene, traffic camera showing unconscious David in her car, lethal levels of Ambien in David's system, Miranda's Ambien prescription with 56 pills unaccounted for, 3 months of incriminating internet searches, emails consulting on how to stage accidental deaths, medical stretcher with David's hair and fibers, Miranda's lies about leaving the house, Miranda's lies about David being suicidal, financial motive, David's trust fund and life insurance. The Orange County District Attorney's Office reviewed the evidence and made their decision. November 23, 2016, 6 a.m. Detectives Chen and Rivera, along with 4 uniformed officers, arrived at Miranda Hayes' residence with an arrest warrant. Miranda answered the door in yoga pants and a Stanford sweatshirt. She was drinking coffee. Detective Chen: Dr. Miranda Hayes, you're under arrest for the murder of David Hayes. According to Detective Rivera's report, Miranda dropped her coffee mug. It shattered on the floor. Then she said something that would haunt the prosecution. "You can't prove I did anything wrong. You have nothing but circumstantial evidence." Girl, that's basically a confession. They read her rights, handcuffed her, and drove her to the Orange County Jail. She was booked at 7:15 a.m. on one count of first-degree murder with special circumstances, murder for financial gain. If convicted, she faced life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her booking photo went viral within hours. This wasn't some desperate woman who'd snapped in a moment of passion. This was a woman who'd planned every detail, who tried to commit the perfect murder, who thought her expertise made her untouchable. And now, she was about to face the justice system she'd spent her career working within. From expert witness to defendant, the tables had turned. The people of the state of California versus Dr. Miranda Elizabeth Hayes. Trial began on September 18, 2017, 10 months after David Hayes' death. This wasn't just any murder trial. This was a forensic psychologist who testified in dozens of cases, now sitting at the defense table. The media was eating it up. Court TV was there, local news stations, true crime bloggers. The courtroom was packed every single day. Presiding over the case was Judge Thomas Brennan, a 26-year veteran of the Orange County bench known for running a tight courtroom and not tolerating any nonsense. Leading the prosecution was Deputy District Attorney Rachel Morrison, a 42-year-old career prosecutor with an 87% conviction rate in homicide cases. She was a pit bull in the courtroom. Y'all know the type. Once she locked onto something, she didn't let go. Miranda's defense was led by Mitchell Baxter, who'd hired 2 additional attorneys and a jury consultant. Their strategy was clear from day one: attack the circumstantial evidence, create reasonable doubt, and paint Miranda as a grieving widow being railroaded by investigators looking for an easy solve. Now jury selection was a whole thing. Took 3 weeks. Why? Because how do you find 12 people who haven't already formed an opinion about the criminal psychologist accused of murdering her husband? They finally seated a jury. 7 women, 5 men, ranging in age from 28 to 64. 2 alternates, all claiming they could be impartial. And on October 9, 2017, opening statements began. D.A. Morrison's opening statement lasted 47 minutes. And y'all, she came out swinging. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a woman who thought she was smarter than everyone else. A woman who spent her career getting inside the minds of criminals, learning how they think, how they plan, how they kill. And then she used that knowledge to murder her own husband. Morrison laid it all out: the failing marriage, the financial motive, the internet searches, the drugging, the drive to the cliff, the lies. She told the jury, "The defendant will try to convince you that this is all circumstantial evidence, that it doesn't prove she killed David Hayes. But I'm going to show you that when you add up all these circumstances, the motive, the opportunity, the means, the cover-up, there's only one logical conclusion. Miranda Hayes is guilty of first-degree murder." Defense attorney Mitchell Baxter's opening statement took a completely different approach. He painted Miranda as a devoted wife trying to save her marriage, a respected professional being destroyed by circumstantial evidence and confirmation bias. Basically, his whole thing was, just because she researched stuff online and had marital problems doesn't mean she killed anyone. Baxter argued that David Hayes was depressed about work, that he'd been drinking heavily, that he'd taken Ambien on his own and driven to the cliff overlook to contemplate ending his life. The prosecution wants you to believe that Dr. Hayes is some cold-blooded killer. But where's the proof? Where's the weapon? Where's the confession? Where's the witness who saw her push her husband off that cliff? There is none. Because this is a tragic accident being twisted into a murder. Okay, Mr. Baxter, let's see how that holds up when the evidence starts rolling in. The prosecution's case took 3 weeks. Morrison called 43 witnesses and introduced over 200 pieces of evidence. Let me hit you with the highlights, because there were some absolutely devastating moments. Detective Sarah Chen was the first witness. She walked the jury through the initial missing person report, the discovery of David's body, and how the case evolved from apparent accident to homicide. She was calm, professional, detailed, everything you want in a cop testifying. Then came Dr. Richard Yoshida, the medical examiner. His testimony was critical. He explained the toxicology findings, the massive amount of Ambien in David's system, the fact that he was alive when he entered the water, the drowning. On cross-examination, Baxter tried to suggest that David could have taken the Ambien himself, maybe combined with alcohol, and accidentally overdosed. Dr. Yoshida shut that down. The level of zolpidem in Mr. Hayes' system was consistent with ingesting 15 to 20 pills. Nobody accidentally takes 20 Ambien pills. Boom. Defense theory number 1, destroyed. This is where the prosecution really started building their case. They brought in forensic digital analyst Kevin Park from the California Department of Justice. Park walked the jury through every single search query, every deleted email, every piece of digital evidence that showed premeditation. The jury saw all of it, the searches about making death look like accident, the emails consulting other experts, the timeline showing Miranda researching this murder for months. And y'all watching those jurors' faces. They were horrified. You could see it clicking. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. This was calculated. Then came the Mercedes-Benz technical expert Martin Fisher, who testified about the car's GPS system and computer logs. He showed the jury, step by step, Miranda's car leaving her house, driving to the cliff, staying there for 11 minutes and returning home. There is no error in this data. This vehicle made this trip on this night at this time. Defense couldn't shake him. They tried, but this dude had receipts, literal digital receipts. But here's the moment that really hit hard. The prosecution played the traffic camera footage, the enhanced version that clearly showed 2 people in Miranda's car. You could see David, slumped over, completely unconscious. And you could see Miranda, driving, looking straight ahead. The courtroom went dead silent. Even the reporters stopped typing. One juror, an older woman in the front row, later told media she started crying when she saw that footage. He was helpless. She was taking him to his death, and he didn't even know. That was the moment the defense knew they were in trouble. The prosecution closed strong by humanizing David Hayes and establishing clear motive. They called David's friends, Marcus Chen, Robert Wilder, his law partners, his parents. These weren't just witnesses establishing timeline. These were people who loved David, who painted a picture of a good man trapped in a marriage with a controlling, manipulative woman. Marcus Chen broke down on the stand when he talked about the last time he saw David, golfing, laughing, saying he thought things with Miranda might work out. He was hopeful. He thought she'd changed, and she used that hope to kill him. Then came the financial motive. Forensic accountant Linda Wu testified about David's trust fund, his life insurance policies, the community property laws in California. Bottom line, if Miranda had divorced David, she might have gotten half the marital assets, maybe $200,000 worth, but nothing from his trust fund or family wealth. But if David died while they were married, she'd get minimum $2.1 million. That's a hell of a motive, y'all. By the time the prosecution rested on November 2nd, 2017, they'd built a fortress of evidence. Mitchell Baxter had his work cut out for him. The defense case lasted just 1 week. They called 14 witnesses. And honestly, it was weak. Baxter brought in colleagues of Miranda's, other psychologists, former clients, academic mentors, all testifying about what a brilliant, caring, professional person she was. But here's the problem with character witnesses when you're accused of premeditated murder. Nobody thinks their friend is capable of murder until they commit one. The defense's star witness was Dr. Frank Holloway, a forensic toxicologist they hired to counter the prosecution's medical evidence. Dr. Holloway tried to argue that David could have taken the Ambien himself, combined with alcohol and anti-anxiety medication, and accidentally overdosed. But D.A. Morrison tore him apart on cross-examination. Morrison: Dr. Holloway, you were paid $35,000 by the defense to review this case and testify, correct? Holloway: I was compensated for my time, yes. Morrison: and in your entire career have you ever testified for the prosecution? Holloway: no. Translation: this dude is a professional defense witness. He gets paid to create doubt. Morrison continued: Doctor, you've suggested David Hayes accidentally took 20 Ambien pills. Can you show the jury a single documented case where someone accidentally ingested 20 sleeping pills? Holloway: accidental overdoses happen, Morrison. A single case, doctor, just one. Holloway: I cannot cite a specific case, no. And that's how you dismantle a defense expert, folks. And then came the moment everyone was waiting for. The question that had dominated media coverage for weeks: would Miranda Hayes take the stand in her own defense? For 3 days, Baxter and his team debated this. Miranda wanted to testify. She was convinced she could win over the jury, use her psychology expertise to connect with them. But her lawyers knew better. They knew the prosecution had her dead to rights, and putting her on the stand would be suicide. November 9th, 2017. Day 17 of the trial. Judge Brennan asked the question, Mr. Baxter, will the defense be calling Dr. Hayes to testify? Mitchell Baxter stood and said, No, Your Honor. The defense rests. You could see it on Miranda's face. She was pissed. She wanted that chance to manipulate the jury, to perform, to show everyone how smart she was. But her lawyers wouldn't let her. Closing arguments were scheduled for November 13th, 2017. Exactly 1 year and 1 day after David Hayes died. Y'all, before we get to the verdict, and trust me, you don't want to miss this, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to Women Justice Files. We dive deep into cases like this every week, breaking down the psychology, the investigation, the trial. And if you're loving this deep dive into Miranda Hayes, drop a like and leave a comment letting me know what you think. Should she have testified? Could she have convinced the jury? Let me know your thoughts. And if you want to support the channel and get access to exclusive content, early releases, and behind-the-scenes research, consider joining as a channel member. Links in the description. Alright, let's get to the verdict. This is where it all comes together. November 13th, 2017. Closing arguments. D.A. Rachel Morrison went first. She had 2 hours to summarize 3 weeks of evidence and convince 12 people that Miranda Hayes deserved to spend the rest of her life in prison. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 3 weeks, you've heard about a woman who thought she could commit the perfect murder. A woman who spent her entire career studying criminals, learning how they think, how they plan, how they try to get away with it. And she used that knowledge to kill her husband. Morrison walked through every piece of evidence: the searches, the Ambien, the car GPS, the traffic camera, the lies. She reminded them about that video, the one showing unconscious David being driven to his death. You saw him, helpless, drugged, being taken to a cliff by the one person in this world who was supposed to love and protect him, his wife. Morrison pointed at Miranda. The defendant sits there calm and collected because that's what she does. She's a psychologist. She knows how to control her emotions, how to present a certain image, but we know the truth. Behind that calm facade is a woman who drugged her husband, loaded his unconscious body into her car, drove him to a remote cliff and pushed him to his death. That's not an accident. That's not a tragedy. That's premeditated, cold-blooded murder. Morrison's closing was powerful, emotional, and meticulously organized. She addressed every possible doubt, every defense argument, every alternative explanation. When she sat down after 1 hour and 53 minutes, you could feel it in that courtroom. She'd nailed it. Mitchell Baxter had an impossible task. He had to convince the jury to ignore the mountain of evidence they'd just seen. His closing lasted 90 minutes. His strategy: attack the circumstantial nature of the evidence and emphasize reasonable doubt. The prosecution has shown you a lot of evidence. I won't deny that. But evidence of what? Evidence that proves, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Dr. Hayes murdered her husband. Or evidence that creates a suspicious picture but doesn't actually prove murder. He went through all the defense theories. Maybe David was depressed and took the Ambien himself. Maybe he was in the car because he asked Miranda to drive him somewhere. Maybe he climbed out to the cliff on his own. But you could see it in the jurors' faces. They weren't buying it. Baxter tried. The prosecution wants you to believe their story because it sounds compelling. But you must remember, you can only convict if the evidence proves guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. If there's any other possible explanation, you must acquit. It was a Hail Mary, and everyone in that courtroom knew it. After closing arguments, Judge Brennan spent 40 minutes instructing the jury on the law, what constitutes first-degree murder, what premeditation means, what reasonable doubt means. At 4:47 p.m. on November 13, 2017, the jury began their deliberations. And now, everyone waited. Y'all, jury deliberations are the worst part of any trial. You've spent weeks presenting evidence, arguing your case, and now 12 strangers are in a room deciding someone's fate. Day 1 of deliberations, no verdict. Day 2, no verdict. Long deliberations can mean anything: a holdout juror, confusion about the law, or just thorough people who want to review everything carefully. The media was going crazy with speculation. Some legal analysts thought a long deliberation favored the defense. Maybe there was doubt creeping in. Others said the jury was just being thorough with all the evidence. 3 weeks of testimony is a lot to process. November 16, 2017, 10:15 a.m., Day 3 of deliberations. The court clerk got the call. The jury had reached a verdict. It was like someone fired a starter pistol. Reporters sprinted to get seats. Lawyers rushed from their offices. David Hayes' parents, who'd been waiting in a private room, were escorted to the gallery. Miranda was brought in from the holding cell where she'd been waiting. According to witnesses, she looked confident, composed. She truly believed she was about to walk out of there a free woman. Judge Brennan entered at 11:03 a.m. "Ladies and gentlemen, I understand you've reached a verdict." The jury foreperson, a 58-year-old accountant named Robert Martinez, stood. "We have, Your Honor." The clerk retrieved the verdict forms from Mr. Martinez and handed them to Judge Brennan. This is the moment that everything has been building toward. Months of investigation, weeks of trial, 3 days of deliberation. This is it. Judge Brennan reviewed the forms. His face revealed nothing. He handed them back to the clerk and said, "The defendant will please rise." Miranda Hayes stood. Her hands were clasped in front of her. She was still wearing that confident expression. The clerk began. "In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Dr. Miranda Elizabeth Hayes, case number 16 CF-2847, we the jury find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree." Her face, y'all, her face, that confidence evaporated in a split second. Her mouth dropped open. Her eyes went wide. She grabbed the defense table to steady herself. David's mother, Patricia Hayes, collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing. David's father just stared ahead, tears streaming down his face. Judge Brennan wasn't done. As to the special circumstances allegation, murder for financial gain, how do you find? Jury foreperson. Guilty, Your Honor. That special circumstance. That's what made this a life without parole case. Mitchell Baxter put his hand on Miranda's shoulder, trying to keep her composed, but she was shaking. The mask had shattered. Judge Brennan thanked the jury for their service and dismissed them. Then he turned to Miranda. Dr. Hayes, you have been found guilty of first-degree murder with special circumstances. I am setting your sentencing hearing for December 18, 2017. You will remain in custody without bail. This court is adjourned. Two deputies moved to handcuff Miranda, and this is when she finally lost it completely. She started screaming, "No, no, this is wrong. I didn't kill him. You all made a mistake." She was still shouting as they led her out of the courtroom and back to the holding cell. The woman who'd spent her entire career evaluating whether people understood right from wrong. She genuinely could not comprehend that she'd been found guilty. The irony is just, it's too perfect. Outside the courthouse, it was chaos. News crews broadcasting live. Reporters interviewing anyone who'd talk. D.A. Morrison gave a statement. Justice has been served today for David Hayes. This verdict sends a message that no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how educated, no matter how well you think you've planned, justice will find you. David's parents, Richard and Patricia Hayes, also addressed the media. Patricia, through tears, said, "Our son was a good man who trusted the wrong person. We're grateful to the jury for seeing through her lies. David can rest now." Man, that hit hard. December 18, 2017, sentencing day. The courtroom was once again packed, but this time there was no suspense about the outcome. The conviction with special circumstances meant only one possible sentence. Before sentencing, the judge allowed victim impact statements. David's father spoke first. "Miranda Hayes destroyed our family. She took our only child from us. Not in a moment of passion, not in self-defense, but through calculated, premeditated murder. She deserves to spend every remaining day of her life in prison, thinking about what she did." David's best friend, Marcus Chen, addressed the court. "David was the best man at my wedding. He was supposed to be the godfather to my kids. Miranda didn't just kill David, he killed all the future moments we were supposed to have with him, all the memories we'll never make." There wasn't a dry eye in that courtroom. Then Judge Brennan addressed Miranda directly. "Dr. Hayes, you have been convicted by a jury of your peers of the first-degree murder of your husband, David Hayes. The evidence presented at trial showed a level of planning and callousness that is truly disturbing. You used your professional expertise in psychology and criminal behavior to plan and execute this murder. You drugged your husband, transported him while he was unconscious, and pushed him to his death. You then lied to investigators, attempted to stage this as an accident or suicide, and showed no remorse for your actions. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." And that was it. Life without parole. Miranda Hayes, the brilliant forensic psychologist, would spend the rest of her life in a California state prison. Miranda is currently incarcerated at the California Institution for Women in Corona, California. She's been there since December 2017. She filed an appeal in 2018, arguing ineffective assistance of counsel and claiming the evidence was insufficient for conviction. The California Court of Appeal rejected every argument. Her conviction was upheld in 2019. According to prison records, Miranda works in the prison library. She's had no disciplinary infractions. She's reportedly writing a book about her case, claiming she's innocent, naturally. Nobody's buying it. Several jurors spoke to media after the trial. Juror Robert Martinez, the foreperson, said, "We deliberated carefully because we understood the gravity of a life sentence, but the evidence was overwhelming. The GPS data, the traffic camera, the internet searches. She planned this murder for months. Juror Linda Chen added, "What sealed it for me was that video of David unconscious in her car. She was driving him to his death and he had no idea. That image will haunt me forever." Same, Linda, same. So let's talk about the psychology here. And this is important, because understanding why Miranda did this helps us recognize warning signs. Multiple forensic psychologists who have reviewed this case believe Miranda exhibits traits of narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. In regular speak, she thought she was better than everyone else, she lacked empathy, and she was willing to hurt people to get what she wanted. Miranda's entire life was about control. She controlled her academic career, her professional reputation, her social circle. When her marriage started falling apart, when David wanted a divorce and she couldn't control that, she couldn't handle it. So she took ultimate control. She decided when and how David's life would end. The irony is that Miranda spent years evaluating criminal defendants, determining their mental state, their capacity for understanding right and wrong. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew it was wrong, and she did it anyway. That's what makes this case so chilling. This wasn't a person who snapped. This wasn't someone who couldn't control their impulses. This was someone who used their expertise to commit murder and almost got away with it. Looking back, there were red flags throughout Miranda's life. Excessive need for control, keeping files on friends and colleagues, viewing relationships as transactional, lack of genuine emotional connection, manipulation of others for personal gain, inability to handle perceived rejection or failure. These are warning signs of dangerous personality disorders. If you see these patterns in someone in your life, trust your gut, distance yourself, protect yourself. This case also raises questions about the criminal justice system and expert witnesses. Miranda Hayes testified in dozens of trials, helping to convict people of serious crimes. Now that we know she was capable of murder herself, defense attorneys for some of those cases have filed appeals, arguing that her testimony shouldn't be trusted. It's a mess. The California Attorney General's office is dealing with it case by case, but through all of this, the trial, the appeals, the media circus, we can't forget the real victim here. David Hayes was 32 years old when he died. He was a son, a friend, a successful attorney. He had his whole life ahead of him. He trusted his wife. He was trying to make his marriage work. He had no idea that the woman he loved was planning to kill him. His parents visit his grave every Sunday. They've set up a scholarship in his name at his law school for students interested in civil rights law. That was David's passion. They're trying to make sure David's legacy is about the good person he was, not just about how he died. And that's beautiful. So what do we take away from the case of Dr. Miranda Hayes? First, intelligence and education don't equal morality. Some of the most dangerous people in the world are highly educated, highly intelligent individuals who use those gifts for evil. Miranda Hayes had every advantage: wealthy parents, top-tier education, a successful career, and she threw it all away because she couldn't handle losing control. Second, the justice system works. Yeah, it's not perfect. Yeah, it's slow. But in this case, the investigators did their job. They collected evidence. They built a case. And a jury of 12 regular people saw through Miranda's lies and held her accountable. Detective Chen and Detective Rivera, they're the real heroes of this story. They didn't let Miranda's credentials intimidate them. They followed the evidence. And they got justice for David. Third, and maybe most important, trust your instincts about people. If someone in your life exhibits those warning signs we talked about, excessive control, manipulation, lack of empathy, don't ignore it. Don't make excuses. David Hayes ignored red flags. He knew Miranda was controlling. He knew something was off. But he stayed, he tried to work it out, he gave her the benefit of the doubt. And it cost him his life. I'm not saying everyone who's controlling is gonna commit murder. Obviously not. But those traits, they're warning signs of potential danger. Take them seriously. All right, y'all, that's the case of Dr. Miranda Hayes, the criminal psychologist who thought she could get away with murder. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. This was a heavy one, but these are the stories that need to be told. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm show this video to more people. And if you're not already subscribed, subscribe to Women Justice Files. We drop new cases every week. Drop a comment and let me know, what was the most shocking part of this case for you? Was it the internet searches? The traffic camera video? The fact that she was a psychologist? I want to hear your thoughts. And if you want to support the channel, we've got membership tiers with exclusive content, early access to videos, and behind-the-scenes research materials. There's also a Patreon link in the description. Coming up next on Women Justice Files, the case of the Instagram influencer who faked her own kidnapping for followers and accidentally confessed to murder. Yeah, it's wild. You're not gonna wanna miss it. Until then, remember, stay safe, trust your instincts, and never underestimate the power of good detective work. This has been Women Justice Files. I'm your host, and I'll see you in the next one. Justice for David Hayes. Sparkles the case of People v. Miranda Hayes is a matter of public record. All information presented in this video was obtained from court documents, media reports, and official investigatory records. Names and certain details have been dramatized for storytelling purposes, but the core facts of the case are accurate. Our thoughts remain with the family and friends of David Hayes. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse or control in a relationship, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. This video is intended for educational and informational purposes. Thank you for watching Women Justice Files.